You are watching via Signal TV, channels 8 and 250. And for those of you who have not subscribed, you are probably watching us via facebook.com/onenewsph. May I invite you to please subscribe with Signal TV. Aside from being able to get the best of the news, lalo na yung newscast na pinangungunahan ni Charles the Stalker Lejano, who always stalks me on before we go on air. You will also be able to watch some of the best programs, the most informative programs, the most entertaining programs. And of course, as I always do, thank you to Mr. Marco Borlongan for helping me set up this connection here in Lipa City, where we have 100 Mbps fiber internet from PLDT. Doon po sa mga guests natin, mga kaibigan natin who are always online nowadays, who are doing a lot of Zooms, a lot of webinars, etc., may I suggest get PLDT fiber internet because and please hindi po sister company sila pero wala po kaming kasunduan. I am not being paid to plug anything. Hindi po ako kumbaga may premium, none. I'm doing this voluntarily because I have always supported products I believe in and products that I actually use. Parang katulad ng BMEG, I actually use it. Petron, I actually use it. So I talk good about these companies. Okay? So in any case, today is March 26, 2021, Friday. Baka gusto nyo malaman who are our guests. Well, by coincidence, and only by coincidence, we are speaking to two people who are on the front line of very, shall we say, sensitive issues. One is Attorney Domingo Egon Cayosa, President of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, and yung sinasabi ko pong sensitive issue ngayon because the Supreme Court has finally stepped in on the matter where ilan na ba? Ewan ko, 60 na ba yun o 62 na ba yun na mga abogado ang napatay. We'll hear the actual details. Ayoko naman po magbigay ng statistics, hindi ako sure, no? Pero I know that many lawyers who are simply doing legal service for clients or people in need of legal representation are being murdered. Yung iba po kinidnap, yung iba binaril sa sasakyan, and the common thread is that they are defending the legal rights of either activists, suspected NPA, rebels, etc. So, or mga organizers and social worker activists. So, yun po. No? And then, the other guest we have is Brother Armin Luistro. Now, the reason I invited Brother Armin to the program is to help us understand what does it take to have public courage. What do I mean by public courage? Alam niyo po, may lumabas na survey, I think 2 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken, and in that survey, it was said that 50% of those surveyed in Mindanao said it is dangerous or they were afraid to be critical of the government. In Visayas, it was said that 40% of the respondents said it is dangerous to be critical of the government. And in Metro Manila, 30% surveyed said that they believe it is dangerous and could be mahirap ng I will just say dangerous. They were afraid of being critical or speaking your opinion against the government. So, in a time such as this, what do we do? How do we find public courage? And it's not just about criticizing the government. It can be about criticizing persons, or it can be criticizing actions or behavior, public behavior. How do we develop public courage so that we can speak to people. Kasi you don't have to be a politician, you don't have to be a leftist, you don't have to be any of that to need public courage. Yun lang, to share the gospel. Maraming mga Catholics and Christians who are afraid to share the gospel. Maraming mga tao asawa who are afraid to speak out on certain matters to their spouse or to their parents. Let's find out about public courage today when we speak to Brother Armin Luistro. Now, it's a Friday, so I do hope you are all settled down, settled in the travel bubble of the NCR Plus. Kami po dito sa Lipa, Batangas, we are dealing with the same problem, and I think many provinces in the Philippines are equally distraught or challenged by COVID-19, particularly the new variants. So we will continue to monitor that, and please continue to pray. In any case, let's go to the front page of the Philippine Star. The Philippines hits a new record high in daily cases as we get more than 8,700 new COVID-19 patients in the country. Kahapon po, medyo maraming ninervyos kasi kahapon lumabas yung 666 at 6. Mabuti na lang naging 6,666. Kasi yung iba sabi, naku, malademonyo. But today, as of yesterday, it was 8,700 new COVID-19 patients. And we can only hope that they are all mild to asymptomatic. Still on COVID, President Rodrigo Duterte reiterates that there should be no jumping off the vaccination line. This as not only local officials but an actor also recently received a vaccine shot. Now, I think we all agree on that point that no one should jump the line. But here's the problem. It is hard for parents or our Tatay Digong, so to speak, the father of the country, to say, do as I say and not as I do. Pinapauna ko lang po yan dyan kasi ayan na po. I am not condemning anyone. I am not pressing anyone against the wall. I am just pointing out, let this be a lesson. Mahirap po. Wala po tayong moral authority or integrity to point fingers at certain government officials or mayors or even Mark Fernandez kasi nauna na yung PSG and medyo kung lantaran lang, di ba, may sinulat daw si Montulfo doon sa kanyang kolong na si De Bolsinas daw, na chief PNP, at siya ay nagpabakuna. Parang kailan? Ano ba yon? Illegally smuggled? Kasama ba sila sa PSG? I don't really know. I just read about it. So, here's the problem. We cannot preach to the crowd if we ourselves are not living the life. Okay, so yan po, magtanda po mga magulang, mga maestro, mga opisyal, make sure that you live the life instead of just saying, do as I say and not as I do. Okay. Meanwhile, Malacanang says President Duterte has raised the Julian Felipe Reef incident with the Chinese ambassador of the Philippines. Medyo too late the hero because inunahan tayo niyang lekat na Chinese ambassador na yan. Sabi ng Chinese ambassador, teka, wala naman kaming mga civilian junta or whatever, or ano ba yun, mga paramilitary boats dyan, mga mangingisda lang namin na yan, kumukuble. But it's like, how do you talk to someone who already denied the matter even before you could speak? I don't know. I do hope the president somehow resolves this issue because this will come back to bite him. Because if he is not able to shoo away or ask our friends to kindly leave because you're beginning to smell like the fish that you have been catching, medyo baka lumaki po ang sunog. Okay, and finally, Pope Francis appoints Cardinal Jose Advincula as the new Archbishop of Manila. Advincula is replacing Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, who I believe is spending more time in Rome or is now situated in Rome. Congratulations po, Cardinal Advincula, pero baka sumakit ulo mo kasi mukhang nasa gitna na naman ang usapan yung Manila dahil dun sa number of people who can attend Mass, especially during Holy Week. Okay, now let's move on to our interviews. Let's go to Attorney Domingo Cayosa, President of the IBP or Integrated Bar of the Philippines. Attorney, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Cito, and good morning to your televiewers.
Needless to say, I'm very happy that the Supreme Court finally took notice of the number of lawyers who have been murdered, assassinated, or whatnot, or silenced, serving so-called leftists. Do you have the actual figures, attorney?
Yes, it's 57 during this administration. Before that, we had over 100 spread from martial law up to the last president, Noynoy Aquino. So the killing has been happening a long time ago. Ngayon lang, it is more pronounced and significantly a lot more. And of course, the different groups, especially IBP, has been consistently denouncing this. Unfortunately, just denouncing it is not enough. And that's why we put up a lawyer security and justice fund of 25 million to encourage whistleblowers and witnesses and prosecution of the suspects and arrest of the suspects. We also have now live MOAs with the PNP, AFP, and NBI so that we have better coordination because it's first prevention, if we can prevent these attacks or preempt them. Secondly, if there are indeed attacks and people get killed, lawyers get killed, we hope that with proper coordination with these agencies and exchange of information, we can more quickly identify and apprehend the suspects, charge them before the courts, and punish them. Because unless the criminals see that if they do these things, they will be promptly and quickly identified, arrested, prosecuted, and jailed, no amount of condemnation, no amount of resolution will stop them.
Okay, so, now the question, Attorney Cayosa, is this. What were these lawyers doing that earned them a death sentence? Kasi alam kong merong mga lawyer activist o lawyer rebels. Meron akong alam na mga lawyer criminals na I'm sorry, no, I'm just putting that there, no, who, as they say, got what they had coming to them. Kumbaga, you live the life, you pay the price. But with these 57 lawyers, what were they doing that deserved being murdered?
Well, if you look at the background of the cases, Cito, close to one half of them, they were killed because they were doing their job. But the other half, of course, you're correct. Lawyers, like any profession or any human being, they get attacked or killed for some personal reasons. But what's alarming is that when close to half of them are killed because they're doing their job, the judge, the fiscal, the human rights lawyer, the defense counsel, that's very alarming because it becomes an attack on the justice system. Now, you're also correct that and many of these also are personal in nature. And that's why our advice to our lawyers is remember our professional ethics and live by them. Don't
Mm-hmm.
give anyone an excuse to harm you or to attack you. But we've also seen that for lawyers who were just doing their job, they were red tagged, they were attacked, they were assassinated. And to us, the response to that should be quick justice, yung justice bilis. Because
Mm-hmm.
unless we can do this, and we're the ones running the justice system, the judges, fiscals, and lawyers. So unless we can expedite their prosecution and punishment, walang maniniwala sa ating sistema. The problem is, Sito, very few are identified and arrested by the police authorities.
Mm-hmm. And now, here's a question. Okay, they were doing their job. Exactly what were they doing? Kasi was I right? Am I right when I said karamihan sa kanila were defending leftists, suspected NPA activists, etc., or were they mixed bag of clients?
Mixed bag talaga, Sito. And if you look very closely, only about five or six lawyers were identified as human rights, public interest lawyers.
Mm.
So it's a minority. But whether it's a minority or majority or one life, I think one attack or murder of a lawyer doing his job is more than enough for
Mm-hmm.
us to raise the concern. So hindi naman ganong karami. But others, like a judge doing his job, a fiscal doing his job, these are government employees. Yet they were attacked, they were assassinated. What
Okay.
is sad is that it takes very long for this government to investigate, identify, and apprehend the suspects, and more importantly, the masterminds.
Mm-hmm. Pagpasensya mo na, attorney, no, please bear with me because a lot of people have been indifferent to the matter. Kumbaga, no, binabaliwala na lang nila kasi the presumption has generally been, hindi, pinagtatanggol niyan yung mga yung mga NPA o mga lefties, kanya pinatayan ng militar. Parang ganon. And you pointed out nga, mixed bag sila. Now, lawyers being killed is one thing, pero fiscals being killed, judges being killed, does this have anything to do with the drug war?
Well, one or two are identified to be connected or uh, connected with the drug war kasi napagsuspetyahan sila as drug pushers
Okay.
themselves or
Uh-huh.
protectors of mga drug lords and
Mhm.
or lawyers of drug lords. But then, if that's the case, whether they're lawyers or ordinary citizens, what due process requires is that you arrest them, present the evidence, and they rot in jail.
Mhm.
We don't condone shortcuts, EJKs. And that's the whole problem. But even this public thinking na okay na lang yan kasi may kasalanan naman sila.
Oh.
Unfortunately, Sito, this is how some of our countrymen think when like 5,000, 7,000, 20,000 suspected drug pushers or drug users were killed extrajudicially. So the culture of killing and impunity and shortcuts has to be stopped, has to be
Mhm.
corrected because parang maganda lang habang nanonood ka. Kung ikaw
Mhm.
na ang kinawaan, kung ikaw ang hindi binigyan ng pagkakataong magpaliwanag, ikaw ay pinatay na wala namang sapat na ebidensya, at o ikaw ginawang fall guy na lang, would that be okay lang?
Mhm.
That's the message to our countrymen. Na this is not just a concern of lawyers or the justice sector. It should be the concern of everyone. And we're very thankful to media like you. You put this across to our countrymen, and you join us in the call for the rule of law.
Okay, now you mentioned 57 cases under the Duterte administration, 100 murders from the time of martial law to the time of Noynoy Aquino. So apparently the killings have not stopped regardless of who is in power. Medyo na-highlight lang sa Duterte administration kasi I suppose mas mabilis ang media ngayon, mas marami ang social media, so mas maraming lumalabas. But what about arrests or cases solved or murderers arrested and sentenced. Meron na ba kahit isa? Have we found even one case that has prospered?
Meron naman.
Mhm.
We have a few, but the operative word there is a few, no? If
Okay.
we look at the more recent statistics, dun sa 57 or 61 lawyers killed during this administration, less than 10% have been identified and arrested and charged before the courts of law. Less than 10%. Now, if you go
Okay.
to the conviction rate, yun din ang isang problema. That's why panawagan natin, Justice Bilis, it takes a lot of time for the courts to decide the cases or for the fiscals to prosecute. Sana naman, bilis-bilisan. Because
Mhm.
napapasama yung kaso ng mga abogado, fiscal at west na pinapatay dun sa unfortunate statistics that in our country, our justice system is relatively slower. So we hope that now the Supreme Court is inventorying all of these cases before the courts. The DOJ is inventorying the cases before the fiscal space. That's what we requested them to do. And
Mhm.
ask the concerned public officials to explain bakit tumatagal. At kung may rason na tumatagal, IBP, the family perhaps of this can be asked to cooperate. Kung kulang ng suporta sa witnesses, we have the IPP 25 million fund to prosecute because I think that's the more important message that nahuhuli yung salarin, nalilitis at napaparusahan.
Okay, now the Supreme Court has, in a way, stepped in. Kumbaga, no, this thing has caught the Supreme Court attention. Now, how significant are the declarations or action of the Supreme Court? Because the last time the Supreme Court acted on a non-legal matter, so to speak, although it was legally presented to them, was with the environment. Di ba? Meron sila yung parang ano ba yun, writ of kalikasan or something. Now, with this, how significant is it that the Supreme Court has stepped in and what are you expecting will happen?
Well, it helps, and we're very grateful that the Supreme Court has spoken. But as I said, it's not enough. It's important to send the signal by
Mhm.
no less than the justices of the Supreme Court unanimously coming up with that statement. And by the way, even the Senate, our congressman, Congressman Rodriguez, the Committee on Justice, there's so many, 57 congressmen who are lawyers, there's 7 senators who are lawyers. They also passed resolutions, but it doesn't stop the killing. I,
Mm.
then that's why from that policy statement there should be concrete steps, and I think one of which is the Supreme Court has ordered the inventory of these cases, and they will be surprised because most of these killings wala pang suspect. The other one which is practical is there should be closer coordination between the different branches of government, Congress and the Supreme Court and the executive branch. And that's why IBP kami, we already had a meeting with the top brass of PNP because
Mhm.
PNP is the chief investigator and law enforcer. So we exchange information, we exchange intelligence, and we coordinate so that faster ang kan pag-apprehend. Unfortunately also, Sito, I have to tell you this,
Mhm.
a number of the families of these lawyers don't even care to uh, to pursue the cases because of fear or because of doubts or because sometimes they suspect that some scalawag law enforcer or government employee or officer is involved. So it's very unfortunate. We should really arrest this kind of culture and this kind of thinking.
Yeah, but the only way you're going to arrest that is if the law enforcement officials actually arrest someone. And I mean, I know I have friends in the PNP. Marami pa namang matino sa PNP. But if this matter is not a priority, is there even a task force addressing this particular concern of lawyers being murdered?
Well, we're moving towards that. You know, if you note the joint statement signed by the IBP president and the OIC chief PNP, is that they will prioritize this. But you see,
Uh,
IBP is a part of.
attorney, pasensya ka na. It just occurred to me. Kasi ako, lumaki ako doon sa mga pulis eh. James Barbers, okay? Sila, anyway, ito lang ano, ang point ko eh, 57 according to your numbers, 62 according to media reports have been killed in the last 4 years during the Duterte administration. By law, by criminal investigation jargon or protocol, serial killer na yan eh. Serial killing na yan. Now, yung ganyang kadami in 4 years would require a task force. If they are only thinking about it right now, are you seriously convinced that you can trust whoever you're speaking to is going to arrest some people? Kasi proof of the pudding is in the eating.
Well, speaking of task force, the DOJ created a task force a few years back.
Mm.
But that's a multi-agency. I suppose the PNP is involved there, but so far not much has moved. No. But again, going back to PNP, gaya ng sabi mo, it will also be unfair to just say lahat ng kapulisan hindi maaasahan. Trabaho nila yan eh. Diba?
Mm.
Sabi ko, marami naman matitino. So to our mind, it is important that the key signals are sent by the leadership. And we're thankful that finally, ang PNP pumirma at they said they will investigate. Now, I agree with you that in reality, talagang wala namang nahuhuli o kukonti. And that's not only for lawyer killings, that's for many of the crimes in this country. And that's why kami, practical lang kami. If you need some funds, if you need witnesses to be protected or to be supported, we put up that modest fund of 25 million. So it's a practical thing rather than just issuing statements left and right every time somebody gets killed. We just change the name and the date. Pare-pareho sinasabi namin. Meron din kaming agreement with them that lawyers are, if they wish, and it's happening in many of our chapters, train for free in their mga shooting ranges. We get their lecturers to train the lawyers who are interested. So these are the more practical, proactive.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, attorney, no. Hindi naman sa ako nagmamalinis o nagmamagaling, ano. But to be honest, I mean, that I have to teach you how to shoot, how to protect yourself, and I am a law enforcement official, parang sablay. It's like you mentioned yung DOJ task force. Nung lumabas itong issue about the killings of lawyers, ang unang nadinig ko kay Menardo Guevara, Secretary Menardo Guevara, is that this has nothing to do with the Duterte presidency. Parang everything is either political or statistical, but we are not addressing the problem. What other actions will the IBP undertake? Kasi, kumbaga sa hospital, sa medicine, yung mga doktor, nagsabi, bahala kayo sa buhay nyo, kami time out na, ayaw naming mamatay. What about lawyers?
Well, the more practical things we're doing is that every time a lawyer is hit in the provinces, the chapter has a task force. They coordinate with the local PNP. We talk with the national PNP, and we get the assailants identified. If you look at the last 4 killings, mabilis ang resolution because gumana yung aming programa. So communication, coordination is not 100% the solution, but it helps. Okay, now, you talk about doctors, ayaw na namin, we go on a holiday, pinag-iisipan din yan ng mga abogado. But ang problema kasi diyan, kung kami magwewelga, ang tatamaan hindi lang gobyerno, kundi lahat ng mga kliyente namin because not all our clients are into criminal cases. So but we can actually dramatize our concerns a lot better by doing other things. Ito nga, the resolution by the Supreme Court, the statement by the Supreme Court reacting to the letters of IBP and many other groups, nakakatulong yon. Yung resolution ng mga senador, resolution ng mga Congress, nakakatulong yon. But then, that's only on the policy level. On the practical level, kinakailangan talagang mag-step up din ang law enforcement agencies and IBP. Kasi kami yung tinatamaan. We also directly link with the family when these things happen and lend our support and encourage them to cooperate in the prosecution. So ito na yung mga practical na ginagawa namin on the ground level. So far, it has produced encouraging results. But if you take those encouraging results in relation to so many years of inaction or neglect, talagang mas kukonti ang
Okay.
nasosolve.
Mas konti. Okay. So, well, we've run out of time, but I think at least malinaw na may nasosolve less than 10% of the cases. Umaksyon na ang Senado, Kongreso, IBP, judges. Di ba may Association of Judges din, Attorney?
Yeah, there are a number of judges association, but IBP is the one speaking for them because as by tradition and because of the nature of their job, hindi masyadong nagsasalita sa publiko mga yan. Anyway, they're all our members. So yung mga hindi nila pwedeng sabihin sa publiko for security reasons or whatever, kami ng IBP ang nagdadala ng mensahe because they're also our members.
So, are you going to call, well, nabanggit mo naman kanina, tinuturuan na kayong bumaril. Are you now going to call for all lawyers to be armed?
No, we are not advocating that. We've done a survey of lawyers. Most lawyers would rather just go by the rule of law. But of course, for those who are willing and who are interested, we just facilitate it. And we're getting the cooperation of AFP, PNP, and NBI. Sila naman ang may mga facilities. So at least meron yan na option for the lawyers who might be minded.
Sa bagay. Yeah, sa bagay, yung tatay ko, nung buhay siya, sabi siya na sila, yung grupo, yung generation ng tatay ko, puro mga pro-gun. Wala naman sa kanilang gumamit ng baril. Lahat sila inatake sa puso. Anyway, Attorney Cayosa, I am just praying to the God Almighty that justice will be dispensed. If not on earth, then on heaven, that all of these murderers will be found, will be judged, and will be sentenced and jailed. And I hope that the IBP will lead the charge regarding this wicked behavior. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you for the prayers, Cito. And kami naman sa IBP, we will lead in the effort to find justice here on earth. Maraming salamat.
Okay. And that's Attorney Domingo Egon Cayosa, President of the IBP of the Philippines. Nakakalungkot po mga kaibigan na abogado ka, sumumpa kang ipagtanggol. We may not always agree with lawyers. I've had my run-in with one or two who were nasty in court. Nagsasalita ka lang, parang pinag-testify ka lang kung magkasundo ba itong mag-asawa, bababuyin ka pa, aasarin ka pa in court, etc. I've had my days with those kind of lawyers. But, it's their job. Parang sa media, may mga masyadong maangas, may mga bastos, may mga mababait, may mga madasalin. But, at the end of the day, pag-usapan po. Intindihin ninyo what is the motivation of the person in court or behind the microphone or in front of the camera. We'll go for a quick break, and when we return, we will speak to Brother Armin Luistro of the Isambayan and of the De La Salle Brothers here on Agenda. Okay, you're back here on Agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran. And next up, we have Brother Armin Luistro of the De La Salle Brothers and also convener of the Isambayan. Brother, good morning.
Good morning, Zito. Good morning to all our televiewers.
Okay, thank you for accepting our invitation. Primarily, the subject matter I wanted to address is the matter of public courage. Kasi napakinggan ko yung mga ilang pagsasalita mo, and I was, musing and saying to myself, here's a man off the cloth. He can just stay in the seminary or in the church and be quiet and just pray that world peace will happen and the will of the Lord is going to happen. But instead, you are in the middle, you are in the thick of things, speaking against authoritarianism, speaking against human rights. And hindi ka naman leftist from what I remember. Centrist ka eh. Sa gitna ka lang, di ba? But where do you find and how do you develop public courage? And as in my opening earlier, sabi ko, hindi lang naman kailangan maging kaliwa ka or media ka. Pati sa bahay, kung minsan wala ng courage ang tao magsalita ng loobin nila at kung ano yung tama.
Zito, I'm a teacher, and one of the most important parts of learning is listening to all views. Because if you have a if someone has a monopoly of ideas, wala na tayo. I mean, a part of an academic institution's role is to make sure that all of these varied ideas, sometimes dissenting, are heard, and that's where I'm coming from. In terms of my religious background, uh, I don't think our faith keeps us chained to our places of worship. In fact, our faith should urge us to speak out in the pulpit, but most importantly, in the streets, because that is where faith is lived, not in the church, di ba? So,
Mhm.
yun lang naman dalawa yung gagalingan ko. And I suppose, even as Filipinos, I think I will also say, yung Pilipino, medyo timid tayo ng konti by nature. But we always value dialogue and discussion. And I think that's where peace is actually achieved. When people can sit down and talk about things, even if iba-iba tayo ng punto de vista.
Okay, but how do you resolve the seeming conflict of views, no, as a person? Kasi you are a person of the faith. The Bible says, love one another, be at peace with everyone, respect authority, etc. And yet, you are in the streets, you are mingling with many people, seeing their suffering or their challenges, and you speak out. Kasi I think you and I are in the same boat. When I start being critical, I go back to the house and I like, am I being a Christian? Am I adhering to the tenets of the Bible or of the church? Parang, and I think a lot of Filipinos have that problem right now. Parang, we want to support the government, but how do we support a government that is half full? Sabi nga nila, di ba? Half empty or half full.
Well, if yung half full, we will never arrive at perfection. So,
Mm.
tanggap naman natin lahat that government, including myself, will never be able to do things perfectly. Um, we, it is our role as Christians to also provide space where even our people whom we don't agree with, programs of government we may not initially support,
Mm.
we must give them time to actually prove their worth. Di ba? Pero Sito, I think the context where I'm coming from at this stage is really 5 taon na naman ang gobyernong ito, no?
Mm.
Uh, Nabigyan na naman natin siguro ng enough honeymoon period. Okay, that's one.
Mm.
Number two, my personal experience ito over the past 5 years has actually brought me to where I am now. I have visited wakes of families who are victims of EJK. They do not belong to plush villages. They do not belong to the schools that I am engaged in. They
Mm.
belong to very, very poor families. I have heard their cries. And like many of them will tell me, hindi ko na po ito hindi na po kami magkakaso. Kasi kailangan ko pong magkaroon ng trabaho para mapakain ko yung mga anak kong naiwan. Uh, that's the very concrete visual in my mind and in my heart. And so I tell myself, so what would my faith tell me in a situation like this? To go back to church, to go back to my classroom and preach about justice, peace, and prayer?
Mm-hmm.
I could not sleep, Cito. I don't see myself as a critic of government. I think there are two types of critics. One is somebody who will go out there and keep destroying every single, maghanap ng butas, di ba?
Mm.
Hindi ako naghanap ng butas. But, siguro naman, even with the best programs before us, someone could actually improve it by saying, baka naman pwedeng ganito, baka naman pwedeng ganyan. And Sambayan stands on that it is time to provide a safe space, a democratic space, where government and those who work within, especially those who are closest to President Duterte, will begin to think, oh naman, maybe there's a better way of addressing the problems that we're facing today, COVID and all. And maybe we should listen to the private sector, we should listen to doctors, we should listen even to our critics.
Okay, but why is it that no one has acted, or maybe I'm wrong, okay? I could be wrong, but why is it that no one has pushed or initiated a national dialogue? Because as you pointed out, it's 5 years already. The cabinet is half full, half empty. We will not all agree, but we can all discuss and try to come up with a common program, brother. No, now we'll just go for a quick break and kindly answer that question. How? Why not a dialogue instead of just pushing for a democratic space? We'll be right back here on Agenda.
Hi, Bro Armin. Si Gal
You're back here on Agenda. I'm your host, Cito Beltran. Welcome to the program. And with us, Brother Armin Luistro, as we discuss public courage. Brother Armin, I was asking, instead of creating a democratic space where we can all, forgive the term, shoot our mouths off, why not create a atmosphere of dialogue where we can all work together? Parang dati kasi in the past, there were attempts, even during the time of Marcos. Cardinal Sin had even pushed, Ninoy Aquino got killed trying to talk to Marcos, but coming back to the Philippines. Maybe I'm arguing against my own point. But what about dialogues?
Cito, from our side and from the side, at least from of academe and the church, that dialogue has always been open. But
Mhm.
I think you and I know that the response of those in power has always been one, to dismiss, number two, to red tag or to yellow tag, and
Mhm.
thirdly, to even accuse and imprison those who are seen as rabid critics. No?
Mhm.
And I think that's part of what we are very, very worried about in Sambayan. This sense of divisiveness. Pag may konti ka lang na batikos, oh my God, you would see how many trolls will just run down your throat and just really, kung kaya lang, patayin ka na, di ba?
Mhm.
But there is something, I think, different from, you mentioned about the Marcos time.
Yeah.
uh, I was a teenager at that time, so my perspective is a provinciano looking at all of these national events. So,
Mhm.
pero, during the time of Marcos, there was a certain decency. This a certain decency that allows dialogue, kahit yung modicum of dialogue, to be initiated. No?
Mhm.
Marcos would call the bishops to Malacanang. Kung hindi siya, he would have emissaries. Email daw was one of those
Yeah.
emissaries.
Mhm.
For better or for worse, there was at least a modicum of respect. Marcos never really attacked the church. Um, Iba yung climate natin ngayon, Sito. While the church continues to be open to dialogue, there has been no consultation at all from that side. In fact, part of the real difficulty now is uh, even language. How can you sit down? And I'm willing to sit down with those in government. I work with agencies, government agencies who are involved in hunger, in COVID, because I know hindi naman monopoly ng central government yan. No? Lahat
Mhm.
tayo kailangan tulungan. Pero if you have a president who says kill, 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 who really curses no end for nothing, from the Pope to God to
Mhm.
bishops, medyo mahirap mag-dialogue. And I think the church and people in Sambayan are ready to sit in dialogue. But there has to be some modicum of respect for each other. No? And I don't know,
So,
being a
you're telling me, Brother Armin, that the traditional go-betweens, the traditional lines of communication, because I remember in the past presidencies, merong tao ng iglesia representing them in Malacanang, may tao ang Catholic Church representing them, pati na yung mga evangelicals, may mga tao, merong parang liaison. Are you telling me that all of those have essentially been wiped out?
wala. Sito, wala akong naririnig. There is no initiative from their side. Once in a while, I hear, oh, may government official, tinawagan si cardinal, si bishop, ganyan-ganyan. Pero, yung bringing people together, I mean, alam mo, pag after you curse and threaten a bishop, medyo
Mm-hmm.
mahihirapan na tumayo yung simbahan diyan, no? And then
Mm-hmm.
a little, oh, hindi naman yan yung intensyon ni presidente. But this has been going on, Sito, to be very honest, for the past 5 years now. And
Mm-hmm.
it has been very, very difficult for the church. And alam mo, tanggap naman namin na mahirap yung maging critic, no? But that is also part of prophecy, part of who we
Mm.
are when we proclaim good news.
Mm.
Lahat naman ng lumalabas puro naman bad news. So I think part of it's not about just talking about negative things. No? It's also talking about meron namang positive things. We can talk about taking care of each other. Hindi naman kailangang maanghang yung mga salita na nanggagaling sa Malacanang. Susunod
Mm.
naman yung tao eh. Kaya lang, baka naman dapat medyo respectful yung language rin na ginagamit. And I think that's the basis for dialogue, any dialogue. This basic respect for each other.
Okay, now going back to our topic of public courage, you may be aware of the survey that was done in the last quarter of 2020, where it was revealed that in totality, the Filipino, based on survey respondents, 40% of Filipinos believe that it is dangerous to print, write, or to be publicly critical of government. Now, I wrote an article today where I reminded the readers back in the 70s, there was a US senator by the name of Mike Mansfield who summed up his impression of the Philippines back then. Sabi niya, 40 million cowards and one son of a bitch. Now, ngayon, if you compute the total of 40%, we're back to square one. 40 million pa rin ang takot sa pamahalaan. What does this say of us, and what should the government think of when you have a situation like this?
I've also reflected on this, Ito, and I told myself, at the end of the day, when we look at where the country is now, it's not about President Duterte alone.
Mm.
We are where we are because of two things. One, our people have allowed it. I listened during the first few years to the president's speeches, and when he makes rape jokes, when he makes fun of women, when he uses foul language, and the camera is panned on the audience, my heart sinks because I see them laughing and cheering him on. And so
Mm.
I thought to myself, alam mo, at a certain stage, it's not anymore the actor there on the podium that is at fault. It is those of us who allow foul language, impunity, and derision of other people to be made part of our very lives. And I think that's one. The second one, Sito, is, I look at the president's cabinet, people in government today.
Oops. I think we have lag with Brother Armin, but do stick around because I think Brother Armin was making a very important point. Yun pong pinag-uusapan namin ay public courage. It is not centered on the Duterte administration or on the left, or it is centered on, and that's where Brother Armin was going. No? He was pointing out that you can blame or you can criticize President Duterte as much as you want, but if you are part of the crowd, not directly a Duterte admirer, but kung ikaw ay taong pumapalakpak pag may nagpapatawa na tungkol sa rape joke o kaya binababoy o, oy, chicks, oh, ganda ng legs, yung mga gano'n, then you really have to ask yourself, ito ba yung kultura ko? Ito ba yung tatauhan ko? And I think the most important thing to ask ourselves is, would I put up with this garbage if it was addressed to my daughter, to my wife, or to my mother? Brother Armin, I understand you're back. I hope we have a better signal now. Brother Armin Luistro?
Hi, I see that. Yes.
Okay. Let's just get the camera of Brother Armin back, and we will go back to his point, because Brother Armin was mentioning before we lost the signal that at the end of the day, the audience is actually encouraging the performer to carry on. Hindi yan ano hindi I have been around some very important leaders in society in the Philippines, and many of them may mga kumakausap, may sumasabing, "Boss, huwag ka masyadong madaldal. Boss, huwag mo nang banggitin yung ganito. Boss, huwag mo nang sabihin yung problema ni ganito." And these are actually people who respond because they are called to task, or their attention is called by people they trust. Ang problema, pag yung mga nakapaligid sa'yo, I mean, like yesterday, I saw this multiple post on Facebook. I don't know if Brother Armin is there. Just bring him in, Gab, when he's ready. But I saw an interview of Harry Roque, spokesman, with Lucy Cruz Valdez, and Secretary Roque was essentially saying, I don't agree with everyone in the cabinet. There are some that I don't really like, and I'm not going to name names, but he started making faces. And alam niyo po kung ganun-ganun yung leaders natin, publicly showing disrespect, confirming discord, then the audience will either say right on, or will say that's not right. I personally would say that wasn't right, Mr. Secretary, because people look up to you. You are the alter ego of the president, and even if you tell me that the president does it, that doesn't give you the right to do it. Okay, we have Brother Armin back. Brother Armin.
Alam mo, Cito, uh, kasama rin yan sa ating Christian duty na not to keep quiet, and this time not to be a critic. If I were on the side of the president, if I were in his cabinet, it is my duty to remind him and to give him the perspective that he may not be able to see. Hindi naman pwedeng yes na lang tayo ng yes, no? Because kaya leadership requires a team who look at all the perspectives and speak the truth to power. In this case, somebody whom I support. Because kung walang ganon, dyan nagkakaproblema talaga. No?
Oh, okay, so with the last minute left, Brother Armin, what is your advice to our viewers regarding public courage, whether at home or in the workplace? Kasi may mga bagay na kailangan nating pansinin, punahin, or sabihin. How do you come up with the courage to do so?
We don't even have to think of ourselves. We must think of what we need for our children and grandchildren tomorrow. We cannot leave a country that is in this current stage without trying to do our best to help. Sometimes helping requires telling the other, "Uy, baka naman may ibang paraan." Siguro naman hindi kailangang pumatay, pwede namang ikulong muna at bigyan ng hustisya. Baka hindi naman kailangang magmura. Nakikinig naman ang Pilipino, magmamaskara naman yan. Kung we have enforcers and we're able to appeal to them. I think that's my message to ordinary Filipinos. We don't necessarily become right away critics and bad people or communists because we say something. Sometimes out of charity, we need to tell the other there is a better way of doing things.
Okay, Brother Armin, thank you very much for those wise words, and I hope our viewers will take it to heart. Please carry on with the movement, and I wish you all in Isambayan success. At medyo marami na ako nakukuhang comment sa question and answer ko kay Justice Carpio, pero it remains to be seen if I am prophetic indeed. Thank you very much, brother.
Prayers for you, Cito.
Okay, much appreciated, Brother Armin. Okay, and that's all the time we have here on Agenda. I'm Cito Beltran, thanking you for joining us this entire week and for praying for us. Alam niyo po, mahalaga po sa amin ang mga dasal ninyo kasi sa trabahong ito, madali ring maligaw, madaling magalit, and yung pagdadasal po ninyo, whether you are Catholic, born again, Iglesia, I love you all and we should love each other. And to those people in Malacanang, dialogue po. Subukan muna natin ang dialogue at medyo hindi na po tumatalab yung kumbaga higpitan. Thank you very much. God bless all of you.